Hi, this is James from Tabletop Gaming Guild, and today we're going to take a look at Dead Men Tell No Tales. This is a 2 to 5 player game published by Renegade Games. In Dead Men Tell No Tales, you guys are going to be cooperatively working together as pirates to loot this ship that you have just vanquished. This ship is on fire, and there's still crew aboard. The crew aren't very happy about you looting them, and to make it worse, this crew is undead. So you're going to race through the ship and try to gain as much loot as possible. In this game, technically, there's going to be an amount that you need to get that your captain ordered that you want to return before you die. So let's go ahead down to the table here. I will give you a general overview of how the game plays, and then we'll come back and I'll give you my final thoughts. Alright, so this is Dead Men Tell No Tales. In this, I have it set up for a 4-player game. I only put 1 player board out so you can see it. But what you're going to do to start the game is you're going to put out these 4 starting tiles. They'll have the question marks on them. You're going to put them in this order. Just these 2 yellows here with the trapdoor on the outside and the 2 reds on the outside. Then you're going to roll these dice and place them out. If you roll a 6, just re-roll to get something else, because 6 is what blows up the room. So right now this room's pretty critical, and probably want to lower this before it blows up. Any room with a trapdoor, you're going to put a deckhand in, and you'll put out this explosion track. This is basically signifying getting off the ship with your dinghy there. And this is the explosion marker for every time an explosion occurs during the game. I'll move these off a little bit so you can see it a little better. Everyone's going to get their own player board. They'll set their fatigue track to 0. They will get 5 movement tokens. They'll put the clean side up, the dirty side down, and they'll get a little token in of the crew member that they selected. And that crew member, you'll get the matching miniature for it. Now, you will also finally get an item, random item. So everyone gets a random item, and all the remaining items, so in a 4-player game there'll be 3 remaining items here that'll be put out, are available for anyone and can be swapped out. Now you could also swap out some of the items that the other players have too, which all give really cool benefits. And we'll get over actions in a second, but the last thing to remember is that all the starting tiles here that a player needs to put out for the first turn. So first turn you actually put out 2 instead of 1. You're going to count the number of players. So in this case there's 4, so 8, and I'll just turn it so that it's an opposite angle. The rest of the tiles, just as a reminder that you will be placing out 2 tiles instead of 1 tile on your first turn. On your turn, there's just a basic sort of steps that you're going to follow. You're going to simply search the ship, which I'll show you that. That's going to be putting out the tile. Then you're going to take your piratey actions. You'll take them equal to the number of coins you have here. And then you're going to do the Skillet Revenge card at the end of your turn. So one thing, which is the goal of the game, is how do you win this game? Well, you win the game by looking at this chart in the book here. Let me show you here. And depending on your player count, so we have 4 players, so 4 to 5 players. If we're going to play the easy level, so Scurvy Dog, we need to find 5 treasures. If we want to play Buccaneer, which is the medium hard level, it's going to be loot 6 treasures. If we're going to play the advanced level, we need to loot 6 treasure and defeat all the skeleton crew, which is pretty hard. So that is your win conditions. If you play with less players, so 2 to 3, your win conditions are a little lower, and so on. Alright, so before we go through a turn, what I want to do is I want to explain also the multiple ways that you can lose the game. One of the ways you can lose the game is all of these little deckhands come out. So if you need to place a deckhand out and there's none available here, you lose the game. What's another way you can lose? Well, you can lose the game if the explosion marker gets over to here. How's another way you can lose the game? Another way you can lose the game is you can't place out a tile. If you can't place out the tile, you can't search the entire ship. Well, what's another way that you can lose the game? Well, another way you can lose the game is if all the pirates are killed. Once you have a killed pirate, you can then get a new pirate. And there's 3 over there with a 4-player game left over. Once all those are gone and there's no pirate and you get killed, then the game is over. Also, if you have the final treasure on the dinghy and someone gets killed, the game, you also lose the game. So once you get the final treasure on, everyone has to be able to get off. So that's untimely death loss. Well, how do you win the game? Well, again, you just get the number of treasures that you need to off the ship, and then you can win. All right, so let's go over your turns. So the first part of your turn is going to be search the ship. So if you search the ship, on the first turn only, you're going to draw 2 tiles. We're going to do one at a time. And when we place out this tile, we have to place it so openings match openings and walls match walls. So I couldn't place it like this. I'll place it like this. So again, remember that you want to do this in a way that you can keep building on, because if you block everything off and there's still tiles left, you can't win the game. And you haven't got all your treasures specified. So in this room here, we're going to go ahead and just place down the 1 die. So yellow is 1 die right there. All right, after we've placed that out, the last thing we're going to do, so remember, it'll just say a number. The beginning ones don't, because, and you know they're the starting tile because you have to roll them. Then I'm going to go ahead and reach in this bag and pull out a tile. So there's a couple different tiles you get. This one here, you're going to take a look at the back. This is a treasure token, so he's a guard. He will not move. Guards never move. However, the other skeleton crew will move. The other things that could have came out is I could have had a normal skeleton crew, and I can tell that they're going to have this, not going to have treasure on the back. This one's going to have grog, and it's a regular skeleton. This guy will move around and try to kill you and stuff. This here, if I pull this, is going to be another one, and there should be a trap door in here, actually. There's lots of trap doors. If I draw a trap door, I would place it out. Then I would also put a deckhand out with it. So let's say my second tile here. Ooh, that one's not nice. I will place this one like this, and I'll put a 2 here, and I'll explain what these barrels are in a little bit. And I'm going to pretend I drew a little hatch here, and I'll place a deckhand. So when you replace a hatch, you always place a deckhand. And that is searching the ship. Now remember, the only time I ever draw 2 is on my first turn. Everyone else's first turn, they'll draw 2. After that, we only draw 1 tile. And you'll notice that we are pretty far through the deck after everyone takes their first turn. So the next thing you could do is piratey actions. Now, your the game comes with a really handy player aid that shows you all your piratey actions. And back here, it's going to show you how to do the enemy elimination and stuff. But in general, these are going to be piratey actions. So one of the first ones you can do is walk. So if you walk into a room, so this is going to be a 0 because there's no fire, and I walk into a room with a fire, so 2. I will take that number of fatigue, the difference. So 0 to 2 is 2. Now, if I move into this room, I would take 3 more fatigue because 5 minus 2 is 3. So that's one action. And when I do an action, I will flip this token over. The next action I can do is run. I could go through 2 rooms, but I would have to take the fatigue of each room. Now, if I run to this room, it'd be 1. And if I run to this room, it'd be none because it's lower. However, if you run, you minimally will get 2 additional fatigue. So I would have took 3 fatigue to go to here. So instead, I'm going to take another walk action, and I'm going to go here. So I would get another 3 fatigue. Now that I hit this, well, what does that mean? Well, this means that I can't go into rooms anymore with a 5. So I'm in here, I'm fine, but if any other rooms are a 5, I can't. If I go, my fatigue gets up to here. It's the same with 4, 3, and 2. So having high fatigue is bad. Also, one way of killing your pirate is going all the way to the skull and crossbones. Your pirate will die. So that is the walk and run action. Now you can lower the fire number. So I can take an action. We're going to say I ran there. And I can lower this by 1. So I can lower it down to 4. So it won't immediately explode. All right. What else can I do? Well, I can eliminate deckhands. So let's say I spend an action for some unknown reason and I move over here. This is lower, so I don't gain any fatigue, but I can spend an action and eliminate a deckhand. You don't want to have these guys build up, because if there's 3 or more in a room, you can't move into the room. You can eliminate an adjacent deckhand as long as there's a connecting room there. So keep that in mind. You can build up rooms you can't go into, but you can clear it out from an adjacent room. You can pick up a token. So if I had a token here, I could have picked it up. And if it falls under the looting, so if it's treasure, we're going to go over some rules restrictions that you get for looting in a second. But let's go over the rest of the actions. The other thing you can do is rest. If you rest, you can heal 2 fatigue. You could increase your battle strength by 1. So I could spend a token to increase my battle strength by 1. I could do that as for many I have available. And this is going to matter later on here when I explain fighting the crew, which is the crew on the ship coming after you. They're still defending it even though it's on fire and sinking. You can swap item cards. Now, one thing to remember when you swap item cards is you could swap anything in here and or with any other player with or without their consent. You're pirates. You know, you share. If you swap out with if you steal technically, if you swap out the item with another player, they don't get your item. You place it in here, and they can pick any item from here. So you could use that as a strategy throughout the game. All right, so a couple other things that you can run into on your turn is you can fight an enemy. So if I say we're here, and I wanted to fight this 6, what I need to do is I would roll the battle die, and with this enemy, I would have to get a 6 or higher. Well, it's a 6-sided dice, so the highest I can get is a 6. Now, I can also use my battle strength, and I can do that. So let's say it's all the way at 3, and let's say I rolled a 3. Now, let's say I actually rolled a 4. It's still under, and I can add my +4 battle strength to it, making it an 8. But if I do that, I have to add all of it. So I used all of it. It's an 8. I would have defeated this guy, and it's a treasure. So at a later action, I could pick that treasure up, and then I would be considered looting. Now, some of them will have cutlasses on them. If you end up picking up a cutlass, so one of these guys right here, what you're going to do is you'll move this over, and it increases your battle strength permanently. So whenever I spend my battle strength, it only reduces down to this 1. So they are like a really neat power-up for your character. All right, so now let's go over what happens if I pick this up. So if I pick this up, I am now considered looting. I have some restrictions now. The only actions I really can take are walk, and when I walk, I take the full fatigue number. So if I walk from here to here, it's not 4 minus 1. I will take 4 fatigue. And then I can also rest, so I can heal 2 fatigue, or I can swap item cards. Those are the things I can do while looting. If I make it all the way out here, I get to place my treasure on the dinghy, and that goes towards our goal of winning the game. Now, the final part of the turn is the fun part of the turn. Well, depending on your perspective. But the final part of the turn is going to be Skillet's Revenge. And in Skillet's Revenge, you're going to flip over a card and do what it says. So this one here is going to, we're not going to look at the bottom yet, but this one here is every die with a 3 on it, red or yellow, will go up 1 pip. So this one here will go to 4. And this one here will go to 4. And that should be it. Okay, so there's other cards in here, like this one here is going to be every room. So in some of these tiles here, they're just going to be blank dice. If they're blank dice, you don't put any die on it when you put the tile out. But if one of these cards flips, you're actually going to put a 1 die of the right color on there. And these ones, any numbered dies, these ones are the ones it corresponds to that will flip. The last important thing we're going to go over here is going to be if you have these 5 dice flip. If you have these 5 dice flip, you'll follow them. Any 5 die that get flipped to a 6, explode the room. But we'll put this 5 in a separate discard pile. And I'll go over a second why, but we're going to go over what happens if the room explodes. So if a room explodes, so let's say we flipped this 5 die over in here, and this was a 5. If the room explodes, you're going to take everything off of it and flip it over. If there was a pirate in there, the pirate's immediately dead. And that person will get a new pirate. If there's no pirates left in the reserve, the game is over. This room is now no longer accessible. You can have the game end by blocking yourself off and not being able to put new tiles out. Any deckhands or pirates or whatever's on there is all just gone. It's going to be lost from the game. So if your pirate dies, you will actually restart with a new pirate. You'll go down to 0 fatigue. You will lose your cutlass. You'll lose your character card. You'll lose this item will be lost from the game. So there's a lot of punishment that you're going to have from having a character die. Also, the explosion marker will move 1 up the track. All right, so that's these parts. So that's the top part actions. Just to point out before we go over the bottom action of these skillet cards, if you ever have discarded 5 of the 5, or sorry, if you ever discarded 3 of these 5 cards, then you immediately reshuffle the Skillet's Revenge deck. So next we're going to go over these bottom actions, and there's going to be a couple different ones. So you notice that skeleton, there's the trapdoor, and there's going to be a trapdoor spreads out. So the easiest one's going to be the trapdoor one. So for every trapdoor on the board, you're just going to put out a deck hand. For the spreads out action, what you're going to do is you're going to put a deck hand in every area that has a lower amount of deck hands than you have, that is not another area with a trapdoor. So in this case, you'd have one like here and here, and this one would put one right there. So they sort of multiply out throughout the board. If you end up with this card right here, basically you can take the skeleton crew that doesn't have a treasure attached to it, and they are going to move towards the nearest pirate. If a skeleton crew so one thing I do need to explain, if a skeleton crew ever moves into another pirate space, they immediately have to battle that skeleton crew member, whether it is their turn or not. And I didn't explain what happens if you lose against the skeleton crew, which I'll do in a second here, but if you enter a space or a skeleton crew enters your space, you immediately have to battle that skeleton crew member. Now, if you lose against a skeleton crew member, you have to roll the die. And when you roll the die, you're going to look at this little chart right here. So if you roll a 1 and 2, the enemy retreats into a legal room, if it can. If it can't, then you're going to have to re-roll till you get an option you can do. If you roll a 3 or 4, the pirate retreats. Now the pirate has to be able to retreat into a legal room, so if my fatigue is up too high, I won't be able to retreat into rooms that have fire levels that are too high, so keep that in mind. If that's not legal, you have to re-roll until you get an option you're allowed to do. 5, you fight again, so I will have to try to fight the skeleton crew member again. And if I roll a 6, I can decide which one of the options I want to take. So in a extremely brief nutshell, that is how you play Dead Men Tell No Tales. You're going to go through this and you're going to explore this map. You're going to be moving in, you're going to be fighting these fires. You're going to try to mitigate a lot of different things. You're going to try to deal with all these skeletons that get placed out. You're going to try to deal with all these deck hands before they get out of control, because you don't run out of this thing. You want to deal with your fatigue to prevent your fatigue from getting too low. You want to make sure that you get those treasures out, but you also want to time that last treasure so that all your people can get out. So you may want to be like, okay, I got the last treasure, everyone get out, because there's no point in getting more treasure at that point. They may need to mitigate some issues on the board to make sure to clear you a path to get out. Now, another thing that will happen in this game is that once you place the last tile out, if there is an opening available at the last tile, that is an additional escape location. You can go out to the dinghy from the last tile, which is really nice. So if you need to dive all that far, You don't have to race all the way across the board to be able to get out. And you can't really race if you're looting because you can only walk, you can't run. And you're going to be taking a lot of fatigue. So chances are while you're walking through, you're going to be spending actions to reduce that fatigue. Now, another thing that I didn't explain, which is really important, is you don't actually have to take all the actions on your turn. If you don't take all your actions on your turn, so I only spent 4 of these 5, this 5th one will go to the next player and give them more actions they can do on their turn. So if you, like some cooperative games, sometimes there's no point for you to take all your actions and you just lose them. Well, in this game, if you don't see that it's like really helpful for you to finish all your actions, you just basically pass your actions over, and that the next player can take advantage of having more actions, which is really cool. Maybe they have a lot of fatigue, and that could really help them out to rest and lower their fatigue. Or maybe they really are in a place to fight some of these guards and get those treasures. Well, you want to give them extra actions to let them get out of the building. So there's a lot to this game, but let's go ahead back up the table here, and I'm going to give you my final thoughts on this game. So I really love Dead Men Tell No Tales. I do love cooperative games, and I love cooperative games where people get to work together. A couple things I didn't bring up in the overview there is very important, is each of the pirates that you get have a power that help you out through the game. So the pirates give each player a little bit of an advantage at different aspects throughout the game. In addition, those items are very helpful, so you can combine them on there, and it's really cool to be able to swap those out because your situation changes. Maybe I need a cutlass because I need to start fighting some skeletons. So there is a lot of decisions that you need to make in the game, and this game is hard. So especially when you get into like the harder modes where you have to get more treasures or even have to eliminate all the skeleton crew in there. So there's a lot of replayability in this game too, from the different combinations of pirates that you end up in, items, and all the different ideas and things that you can do throughout the game. There's only a little bit of, well, you get luck from what you flip on the tiles and what comes out, but the biggest amount of luck is at the start of the game when you roll those dice to see what your 4 starting tiles are going to be. And they could be high numbers, so your first turns could be dictated for you because you need to lower those numbers on it, because you can't have one of those starting tiles explode. So your first player's turn might be trying to lower those numbers down to at least 4s before you flip the first Skillet Revenge cards. Other than that, the game you have to have a lot of different strategy throughout the game. So you have to work as a team to be able to loot these treasures. You're going to probably be passing actions to the player who's getting ready to loot because you need them to get out as quickly as possible. You don't want them to be having multiple turns inside the ship because there's more chances for them to die, 1, and 2, it delays the game from being able to win. You want to try to get your win condition as fast as possible in this game. So a lot of really cool things that you have to think about the game, a lot of really cool strategy, and it's in a very addictive game, which is another really important thing for it. I find this is probably going to come to the table really, really often, and it's not just because I like the pirate theme a lot, well, partly because I love pirate-themed games, but it is a solid cooperative game. So if you're looking for a fun cooperative game, I would highly recommend checking out Dead Men Tell No Tales. Thank you for watching.